Fasten your seatbelt. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butts.
Go get him, kid.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
F? You're going to ask me. So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me. And my natural response could be to get offended.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making. We're creepy and we're kooky. I'm not even going to start that because if we start singing, it's never going to end. It is the 30-something movie podcast. It is the Addams Family, and we're ready to get a little kooky with you here. Before we get started with that, though, this is a very special episode. It's like one of those 90s after-school specials, a very special episode of the 30-something movie podcast. This time around, we've actually got one of our Patreon co-executive producers on with us. We have Mr. Rob Perry. Rob, how you doing?
Good, gentlemen. How are you?
Excellent. I've also got with me Mr. Patrick Canigallo.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Rob, welcome. So great to meet you, and it's going to be fun to talk movies with you tonight.
Nice to meet you, Pat.
And then the elusive Dennis Matuch is here tonight, too.
Yep. Hey, John, and welcome, Rob. Again, thank you. Thank you for your support, and looking forward to hearing your opinions. Good to have somebody who probably knows what they're talking about.
Let's not get carried away.
Oh, man.
Are you just saying that? And I've already commented on it. Are you just saying that because you can see the shelf of movie memorabilia behind him?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is most impressive.
We've got, I mean, a lot of times with Pat, you can't really talk horror movies. I mean, Pat will be a nice guy and he'll say, oh, yeah, okay, all right, cool. Yeah, cool. But you can't really talk horror movies with Pat. So it's kind of fun to see, you know, all the stuff you've got back there. And Pat, I did already comment on the Ash statue. I was very happy to see that.
Yeah, the Ash statue. And then it looks like, is that like one of the Enterprises back there too?
Yes, okay. I have the original Enterprise on the other side, and then that's the J.J. Abrams Enterprise.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, man. Well, it's cool. Well, and I never know with Zoom, like, you know, like, man, I'm kind of like peeking in the window of your house. Well, you know, like I want to be careful with that. But
the fly poster, yeah, that was a good one. The fly poster. Was that Hellraiser there? Is that the Hellraiser guy?
Yep, that's Pinhead.
That's what I thought. Okay, Pinhead. There you go. And I couldn't zoom in enough to see all the different DVD titles, but
yeah.
Oh, that's only half of them. It goes on and on.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Well played, sir. Well played.
That's it's a little bit more impressive than on the other side of the basement over here. I've got all of my comic books that I've collected since I was a kid, and I've got just shelves and shelves of Star Wars action figures from the ones that I had when I was a little kid, you know, back in the early 80s, and some of the brand new ones. And so that's a little nerdier than what you got there. Like that's a little bit more, you know, what you got there is kind of, I mean, it's still nerdy, but I mean, let's
have to ask, what is the one close to the fly poster? I think
that's a little Ash bobblehead, and then it's a Weapon X next to that.
Okay.
Oh, Weapon X.
What's
nice.
The bobblehead?
It's Ash.
Okay, well, it is Ash. Okay, that was Ash. That's when you guys talking about. Yeah, I can see it.
Well, you just became a friend for life to Pat when you said Weapon X.
Yeah, you're a Wolverine guy.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. So, why, if you don't mind me asking, why Wolverine? I'm a Wolverine. I like to think of myself as a Wolverine guy, but why Wolverine for you?
Yeah, I'm a little scrappy dude, just like Logan. You know.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Except I can't back it up at all. I'm just a little scrappy dude.
Well, I'm right there with you, man. Because that's the thing. Like I'm a big Logan fan, but yeah, I don't know that I can back it up quite like he can. But yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Pat, if you need something new to get excited about. We will actually we'll be covering the Logan movie here on the show in about 26 years.
John, that's awesome. That's right about the time that we're all going to retire. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be our retirement episode.
I'm sorry, Dennis is retiring in like 2 years. So.
I was going to say Dennis will be about 5 or 6 years into Social Security at that point, but I mean, you know.
Yeah, I won't be. I'll be on nothing, man.
Yeah, Dennis. It's okay. By 2047, I'm sure all the nursing homes will have great Wi-Fi. Dennis
he'll be the Soylent Green for us by that point. But I was going to say, you know, the Ash, like I said, as we're kind of doing the creepy, like peeking into Rob's awesome collection there, and that DVD collection is like outstanding. Thank you. You're welcome. That's inspiring, man. That's awesome. You know, it's funny. I happened on one of these lists, you know, like the top 100 cult movies of all time. And and you guys really know like the different writers and all that. I remember, John, I think I came on the podcast one time. I'm like, hey, so-and-so wrote this really interesting article about Star Wars. It's kind of like blowing my mind. And it's kind of unconventional. And I brought it up, and John, you actually had that look on your face and you're like, oh yeah, it was written by this guy. Yeah. I don't really take much of what he says with, you know, and I'm just like, okay. Like I had no, you know, but so I don't know who put this list together, but it's always interesting seeing, you know, and it was top 100. And what was nice is, you know, it kind of comes up and it's not one of those that you have to click the next button and wait 10 seconds for it to load. It was one article that you could just scroll down. So I'm like, okay, I'm hooked right away. But it went down and it was a really interesting mix of movies, and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness all made the list in different places. And there was everything from The Room was on there. Rocky Horror Picture Show was on there. UHF was on there. I mean, it was like a really cool mix. Number one was The Big Lebowski. So I'm like, okay, but I was just thinking back because, I don't do horror movies. And like, that was one of the great things about this podcast is we watched Evil Dead Part 2. And I was kind of like, I don't know how to feel. I mean, I'm not like weirded out, but I'm kind of laughing. Should I be laughing? And they're like, oh no, you should be laughing. And then they're like, you got to check out Army of Darkness. And now like, that's like, man, why am I not watching this movie at least once a month? Like, this is outstanding stuff. And they got me hooked into Ash vs. Evil Dead and all that fun stuff.
Gone too soon.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started on Ash vs. Evil Dead and how it's not still here.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that we've gone this far yet when we've talked about some of our future plans, but our Patreon exclusive episode for October, for Halloween month, is actually going to be the first Evil Dead. So have you seen the first Evil Dead yet? Did you go back and watch it?
I haven't yet. So this is exciting.
Well, you got till October.
Okay.
So, steel yourself. Get ready.
My soul is prepared.
There you go. Well, we will swallow your soul, but that's okay. So that was actually the one that got me started. That was the only one that I'd watched up to that point was Army of Darkness. And I watched that one as a kid, probably way too young. It was at a sleepover party at a friend's house in England, and watched that one as a kid, and then didn't really see any of the other ones. Because you know what? I'm not sure that I knew. As a kid, I don't think I realized, since there was no number on the movie, that Army of Darkness was like a third sequel, or like a second sequel, is a third part of the movies. And so it took me a while to really figure out that Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 were the same thing. And so then I think it was maybe high school, and I was like, oh man, I got to watch Evil Dead. And I never did. And then I got to college, and they were doing one of those like rewind film festivals at the local theater. And so in the course of 2 weeks, I went to the theater, and I think I ended up seeing Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, Evil Dead. What were some of the other ones? Really great movies that they were showing in this film festival. And I saw the first Evil Dead, and I'm like, oh man, like, what am I missing here? Why haven't I not watched this before? And so then I immediately, I think the next day, went to the little VHS like rental place that we had on the U of I campus. And I was like, I got to find Evil Dead 2. Like, I got to watch this. And I was like, when I watched it, I was like, it's Evil Dead 1, but with more money. Like, that's awesome. This is great. Yeah. So no, I absolutely love those movies.
Yeah, we saw them. I was 11, so my dad was a big horror film guy. So VHS.
Yep.
Didn't see the theater, but saw Evil Dead, and then was like, I think it was 11, and then I was probably about 60. It was 93, I think, or no, 87, wasn't it? 87 was 80.
The original Evil Dead's 81.
86 is 2.
87, 93.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So every 6 years, it was like, oh my God, it was kind of exciting for us because I had 4 brothers and we all loved the first one. And then we liked the first one, I would say. We liked the first one. We loved the second one. And then Army of Darkness was like, whoa, it was like, we were just super excited when that came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get too much further down the horror movie rabbit hole, let's go ahead and get to know Rob a little bit. So, Rob, I got some questions for you. It's not 3 questions, so don't worry about that. We're not going to go into the whole. He asks each traveler, but why don't you just start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Rob. From Maryland. I grew up here, live here, I work here. Started out my career in journalism. Spent almost 20 years in journalism before the company that I used to work for was bought by another company, and then they just started doing this. And it was newspaper journalism. So now I work for. I'm a contractor with the Navy. I write for Naval Aviation News magazine. So I write about jets and cool stuff for the Navy. A lot of fun. But absolutely, movies has been one of the biggest things in my life. It was a bonding thing with my dad. It was more science fiction, westerns and stuff like that. And then my mom, it was definitely horror movies. And I kind of figured out comedy and dramas and everything else along the way on my own. But my all-time favorite horror movie is the original Night of the Living Dead, 1968. I still hold that as one of the, not only one of the best horror films, but one of the best films. To me, it's a drama that just happens to have horror elements in it because there was, George Romero went to his grave saying, we didn't really think too much about casting a black guy as the lead, but yeah, you did. Yeah. But that's another thing that about horror movies is that I think they get a bad rap because there are trash movies that I like. All the Friday the 13th movies, there's nothing deep there, but I love them anyways. But a lot of horror films have a lot of deeper societal messages and impacts that a lot of horror movies just kind of get overlooked as that. But that's something I've grown to appreciate as I've gotten older. But I'll still sit down and watch Die Hard or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Pulp Fiction a million times over. So like I was telling John earlier before the podcast started, I kind of stumbled on you guys from another movie podcast and listen to just about every episode. I have listened to every episode except for one. For some reason, I can't get Stand By Me to download either from your website or on the podcast app that I use. So I've listened to every single one, but it is really nice to hear you guys just sit and discuss openly and honestly about movies that you grew up with. Haven't gone back and revisited. And probably one of the questions you had is, what is one of the movies you guys have discussed that one of the episodes that I really like? And it was when you guys most recently discussed Jacob's Ladder, because I think that was a movie that a lot of people overlooked. And I remember seeing that in the theater. I was in middle school. It was way too heavy for somebody in middle school to sit and really understand and grab it. But that's one that I've gone back and revisited many times and just find something different each time. So to listen to you guys who hadn't seen it ever, at all, that was really cool to listen to. Something that I'm like, man, nobody talks about that movie, and these guys are discovering that's another thing I love about this podcast is you guys talk about things that was around when you were at 30 years ago, and you're discovering some things for the first time, and then going back and looking at things and like really talking about what you loved about it, what you loved about movies, and how you start out, how did this movie make you feel? And, so I'm glad to be here. And I kind of dove in to become a Patreon supporter once you guys started putting out the extra episodes. And when you guys did 3-hour long Empire Strike Back retrospect, I was like, all right, fine. That's a few shekels. I could listen to people talk about Empire Strikes Back for 20 hours. So
Well, and that's when we realized after we finished because I think it was about 3.5, almost 4 before I did any kind of editing at all. And I think as soon as I want to say that same night, as soon as we hit the stop button on the recording, I think at least a couple of us were like, guys, we didn't talk about this. Like, nope, no more. If we can do a follow-up later, we'll do something else, but no, we're done for tonight. But no, I gotta say that Jacob's Ladder one of any, and I've been thinking more and more about that, our episode on it, but even just watching it, and Pat, you probably feel this way too, of all the souls in all my travels, of all the movies that we've done on this podcast, I don't know that there's been a movie that has blown my mind more than Jacob's Ladder. One that because when I look back on these and I'm like, yeah, it's 30 years old, I haven't seen this one, I'll probably enjoy it. It's usually kind of how I feel about ones I haven't seen before. Like, I'll give it a try. I mean, it sounds interesting, but that one, like, I watched it and I was like, wow. Like, not only was that a great movie, like, wow.
Yeah.
It haunts you. It really does haunt you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really taken with that movie. Like, I just, agreed. That was a wonderful movie. You know what? And if you don't mind me asking, I'm going to go on a complete tangent because I know that you mentioned that your father liked watching sci-fi, and I think we talked a little bit before we started recording. I think we're close in age and everything. And one of the ones that we came up with a couple of years ago was a sci-fi one that was a made-for-TV one called Earth Star Voyager. And I was wondering, had you seen that one before? And do you remember watching it when it came out, like the Sunday special type thing? I was wondering if that was one that you remember seeing as a kid.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I mean, there were a few made for TV things that I remember, but when you guys started talking about it, I was like, I don't remember this at all.
Okay. And I'm curious because it was one of those that we were all talking about, and it was like, I remember this thing, and they're like, yeah, I sort of. And I mean, I went on the Google, and I couldn't even remember the name, and it was like I would just type in Google like TV movie with, and I would just like put like a paragraph into the search ribbon thing of describing every little bit of the movie that I could remember. It was like when, you see those movies where they describe someone and they do a composite sketch, the police do this composite sketch or whatever. I think I was doing that to Google and it popped up. So I don't know. I'm just always curious asking, if people remember those weird oddball kind of rarities that, stick out in the childhood. So anyways.
But if you guys did a like an episode about this little show called V, that would have been different. I would have been all over that. I mean, I loved V. I still do. I'll still go back and watch at least the mini series at least once a year.
Sci-fi. Twilight Zone fan too?
Absolutely. Love the Rod Serling and the 80s version. I haven't bothered with the newer one with Jordan Peele.
There's a few decent ones in there, but yeah, definitely nothing holds. It's the original Rod Serlings are just classic. I still can't. If it's on, I'll just start watching and sit down. I love Rod Serling.
Yes.
Really quick on the Night of the Living Dead. Just a quick question to that one with the original, because that's again one of my favorite ones too. Do you still find yourself having? You said you watch that probably a lot. You like it. It's one of your favorites. You still get frustrated at the ending?
The anger. Yes. The ending is one of those.
My TV. Like.
Yeah. Just after all of that, and it's just so casual. But it's how they are at the end. They're just so casual. There's another one for the fire.
Oh, and then the credits are just rolling, and you're just like, wait a second, I've been with this dude for how long, and he has done everything right, and he survives everything, and then spoiler, and then at the end, that happens, and you're just like angry. I'm just like, even now, I know what's going to happen, and when I get to that part, I feel like somehow there should be an alternate ending button. I know there isn't. Yeah.
So to your earlier point, Rob, you claim that that casting was just by accident? No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Well, and then the great part about that is the setup for when it's the dawn is the one where they're in the mall.
Yes.
And then the guy gets up to the top, and the same sort of situation where you go, no, not again. No, not again. What do you don't give? But that's no. And then all of a sudden he like puts down the gun and just goes up and runs up into the helicopter. It's like, there's some sort of vindication if you watch that one of like, yes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, don't do this again to me. Don't do that again.
Yeah, but also to that point, as much as I love the serious and the downer ending of Night of the Living Dead, probably one of my close second favorite horror films of all time is the original Return of the Living Dead. I absolutely adore the original one. The second one is absolute garbage.
One, correct? That's the funny one. The correct, like where it was.
The first one with the punks, the funeral home, and the medical supply.
Yeah,
love that one. The second one is just garbage. it just completely lost everything that made the first one. And then the third one is just completely out there.
I don't even think I remember the third one. The second one, we were disappointed with. The first one was absolutely good. It was classic.
Isn't the third one the one where the girlfriend dies in the motorcycle accident and they reanimate her? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't see that.
Yeah. But yeah, I could talk horror movies for hours and hours and hours and never get bored. So,
yeah.
Well, you found a kindred spirit here on this podcast, because Dennis is definitely a horror movie aficionado, as they say. So
I'm not as thrilled with a lot of the more current ones, though. That's the interesting thing. I mean, I think it's because I grew up and my dad was a very big horror film fan, so there's that kind of nostalgia there. But it's also, we saw them at those times. There's something classic about those, and then you kind of hold. A lot of the new ones become formula to a certain degree. There's still some really good ones nowadays. Like I'm still, like, one of my top is, it's not necessarily a horror film, but I love The Sixth Sense. So Sixth Sense was always it was one of those movies where I'm like, man, I got to watch it right now again, because no, that's not possible. Yeah. And then I watched it again and it was like, oh man, that's good. So
yeah, I'm also a big fan of the old Hammer films. I love Christopher Lee's Dracula.
Yes.
At least the first several films.
Yeah.
And that's I knew Peter Cushing from Star Wars, but he became Van Helsing and Dr. Frankenstein the older I got, from those movies. So
you go far back, and like the Vincent Price.
Vincent Price is probably my favorite of all time. I love
Red Death. I mean, all those,
Last Man on Earth. That was probably my actual introduction to quote unquote zombies, was Last Man on Earth.
Yeah. Nice. Yep. Good.
All right. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Rob, you said that your mom wasn't big into horror movies. Did she introduce you to a lot of these, or was it kind of like she had some that were her favorite that kind of like got you into that realm, and then you started branching out and checking things out, or how did?
Well, it kind of started. I mean, it actually started with Night of the Living Dead, because around Halloween time, there would be the local TV stations would be advertising their horror movie lineup, and remember one of them was for the colorized version of the original Night of the Living Dead, and I just remember my dad making a crack at my mom, saying, "Oh, he was like, that movie already bothered you. There's no way you're going to watch it in color," and I just saw this look on my mom's face, like, oh my God. And I just like kind of asked her that, another year went by and the original was coming on TV. And I could tell my mom was kind of getting a little worked up and a little scared when we were getting ready to watch. And I was still in grade school. And I was just like, black and white movie can't be that bad kind of thing. And we're sitting there watching, and about as soon as Ben and Barbara are in the farmhouse, and things starting to calm down, and then the kids come up from the basement and they're all talking. Then the zombies start coming in. My mom goes, "Okay, we got to shut it off." So it was like a taboo. I need to know what happens next, kind of thing. And I saw it, a little bit of time later. But my mom told me a story that my dad scared the heck out of her, and that probably also made zombie movies her big thing, and also my big thing too by default. They had just got done watching the Dawn of the Dead, excuse me, and they were laying down to go to sleep and everything. It was all quiet. My mom was just was still reeling because she had never seen anything like that, and everything's quiet. And then my dad reached over, grabbed her shoulder, and went, and he said, my dad told me he had to peel my mom off the ceiling. Yeah. She jumped so high out of it. So I mean, it was kind of, it started with that reaction. Also, my mom had this book that I finally tracked down. It was a pictorial history of horror movies. And it was, I just sat there and flipped through it, looking through the pictures, and it was everything from, the German expressionist era of horror films, from Nosferatu and the Great Golem, all the way to the end of the Hammer films and just about to, the modern era, the early 70s. And I was just flipping through it, and I was just fascinated. And then anytime like an old horror movie, like you guys were talking earlier about stop motion movies, and the original King Kong is still just a great film, despite the special. And I love the Peter Jackson remake. I absolutely love it. But that original, anytime that came on TV, I just could not wait to see King Kong fighting against the dinosaurs. Just absolutely love that.
That's really interesting, because I think that book that you just mentioned, I think we had or owned that book, and I agree. Flipping through that, I don't know if it had like the Oliver Reed version with I think where he's the werewolf. I mean, and there would be like the color Peter Cushing and all that. Like, yeah, no. So I remember I think this is the same book. Was it pretty big?
Yeah, no. On the front of it, it had like the painting of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein.
Yes,
on it.
yes.
Yeah.
I think.
And on the back was King Kong, and like Sheena. No, not Sheena. 1,000 Years BC.
Black and white pictures. Then it'd be a section with a bunch of color pictures, and you're like, oh my god, the color pictures look so scary. Yeah, it was like, I remember that book. I wonder where if we even have that somewhere, if my mom's or what happened. But we used to own that book.
Yeah, I found it on.
We used to go and take it on my dad's bookshelf, and just thumb through that thing and be like, oh my god, look at these. It was just, that was scary enough sometimes, just reading through that book and seeing the pictures as a kid.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, we'll say, after you told that story about your dad scaring your mom like that, I don't know that I've told this one on the podcast before. When we did Invaders from Mars, I told about the one where my mom put the Band-Aid on the back of her neck and burnt the breakfast and everything else. That terrified me. Before I was even born, my mom and dad, and I want to say they hadn't been married very long. They went to go see The Exorcist in the theater. Yeah. And my mom is not a horror movie fan at all. So she really loved my dad. So they went to go see The Exorcist in the theater, and they got home later that night, and we're getting ready for bed. And, she was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, brushing her teeth. And she came back and she laid down in bed, and my dad wasn't there. She thought he was, I think he left a light on in the other room or something. So she thought he was just, getting something together before coming to bed. So she crawls in bed. What my dad had done. So Pat, have you seen The Exorcist?
No.
There is a scene in The Exorcist where the girl is in the bed, and I think she's tied down, and the bed starts rocking like crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad had actually crawled under the bed.
Oh, good.
And my dad was a big enough guy that he could actually lift the bed with my mom laying in it. And so he lifted up the bed and just started shaking it around while she was in it. I don't know how many nights he slept on the couch, but he said it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. I'm like, God, that is... I don't think I would ever do that for, just for the sake of marital harmony. I don't think I would ever do that myself, but that's just awesome.
Well, if you think I'll make up the couch here for you, John, in case,
If I ever try it.
You had seen that, right? The Exorcist, or no?
I have not seen the movie cover to cover, as they say. I mean, I've seen some iconic scenes that will pop up now and again. But
one of the more disturbing for me, just because the way we were first introduced, that we would be sent to go to bed, which was the second floor of our house, and it was it wasn't carpeted and cozy as it was kind of, I forgot what type of tile floors, but we would go up there, and we could hear through this big vent. It was a big square vent, the air vent. And below it was the living room. So we can kind of peek and almost see, depending where the TV was, like maybe get a glimpse of it, but you could hear everything clearly. I remember Ernie Kovac's show and everything else. And we would not go to bed. We'd listen to everything. So it became a radio show for us. And one day we were listening to that thinking it's going to be the Honeymooners or it's going to be something funny. And all of a sudden it's The Exorcist. And we're just like, maybe we ought to go to bed. Because you're hearing her start talking and like demon, and it's just like, whoa. And I remember we were like, oh God, what was that movie? What were we watching yesterday? And we just jumped in our beds and pulled up the covers for that one. And then eventually we saw it, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
What a wonderful day for an exorcism. My wife actually just texted me because she can hear me from upstairs. She said, there are supports under the bed. I think you'd have a tight fit. Thank you for not trying that. So, yeah. And actually, we talk a lot about how, movies that we love, and we use phrases, we use quotes from the movies in our everyday life. I am maybe slightly ashamed to say that there is one from The Exorcist that I use fairly regularly, and even with my own kids, and they have no clue what it's from, and I will not tell them what it's from. They'll ask me to do something like, Dad, can you buy me that, or can I have, $20 or can I do this? And no, that would be a vulgar display of power. I'm not going to do that.
Nice.
Not going to do it.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, second question we've got for you is, what is your favorite 80s or 90s movie?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Throw me on an island with just a single movie, and I'd have to say from the 80s, I've got to say Star Trek 2. I've I saw that in the theaters with my dad, and I just remember having just such a strong, because I was familiar with the TV show, and I really loved Kirk and Spock and Bones, and I remember coming out of that and just being crestfallen at the thought of Spock dying. I remember my dad, it was just a short drive from our house, from the movie theater to our house, and my dad, I'm just like, is Spock really dead? And my dad's like, well, yes, but no, I don't think so. And this is he had seen the interviews of Leonard Nimoy saying he was done with being Spock and all of that. So I was so excited when we finally saw the trailer for The Search for Spock, and Dad told me to drive in to see that, and I was so happy. Spock's back. But a very, very close second, I would have to say Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's a movie I saw in the theater with my grandmother, of all people, because she loved Harrison Ford. She thought Harrison Ford was just the sweetest man in the world and could do no wrong. And I don't think she was expecting the same movie that she was advertised on TV when we went to saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you get to that last 20 minutes of the movie, But so yeah, I think I have connections with those movies more because I saw them in the theater first run, and I saw them with family members. And as for the 90s, that's so much harder because if you're a horror movie fan, the 90s there was not much going on. There were some bright spots, so I kind of other than Scream, I think Scream was the movie that set everything back on track in the 90s. But hands down, I'd have to go with Pulp Fiction, just because of the impact it had on just the movie industry, and it kind of opened everybody. Especially if you were at that age when Pulp Fiction it really hit, was to pay attention to lots of smaller movies. And what you could do with a good script and good writing and a story told well.
I saw that movie at a friend's house in high school, and I absolutely fell in love with that movie. And I must have looked for, I don't even know how long, I must have looked for that movie on VHS forever and could not find a copy of it. And I think eventually I maybe found a copy at, maybe it was at Sam Goody in the mall or something like that. And it was like $30 for the VHS tape. And I was like, all right, well, high school kid, and and I got a girlfriend, so I don't really have $30 to spend on the VHS tape, but I love this movie, so I'm going to do it. And I remember buying the VHS tape for $30 and then like 3 days later finding it for $12 somewhere else and just being really upset. But no, I absolutely loved that movie when it came out and just was completely taken by it.
And breaking up with your girlfriend.
No, we're married now, so we're okay.
It is, yeah. You got that.
Yeah.
He told her, hey, I went VHS tape over, or Pulp Fiction over.
Yeah. She knew early on what she was getting into, so.
It's going to be McDonald's for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Pulp Fiction I remember just seeing that and being like, I didn't know that you could do things like this. This is, and then you mentioned Raiders and Star Trek too. And obviously we're pretty big Indiana Jones fans and Star Trek fans on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, seeing Star Trek too, and it's funny because like yourself, I mean, I grew up watching the show, the reruns of the original show, but as far as like the first time Star Trek imprinted on me, it was really those movies, 2 and 3, and yeah, I think there's a case to be made that Star Trek 2 is maybe the greatest Star Trek thing ever created. I mean, it's just, the impact of that and just the way they can make it a big space adventure. John, you describe it kind of like a submarine combat movie. Bring back a villain that's like Well, Dennis, you bring up the point, like, a great movie usually requires a great villain, not just some kind of vanilla, someone that you don't know. But I mean, you've got arguably one of the greatest villains of all time. And somehow you make this, intergalactic submarine movie with a great villain, but it's still, and not as a roast on on it, but it's like one of the shows. It's got all the best parts of what made that show. The argument between McCoy and the emotional and sometimes irrational, and Spock, the logical, possibly not disconnected, but maybe, you're half human. Don't you have any feelings about that? I know that was a different Star Trek movie, but I mean, so you have those arguments in there. And meanwhile, like another level of it where Kirk is the swaggering hero, but he's getting old and someone's getting the best of him. And how do we age? And, and all accessible for a young person. Like I remember understanding as much as you could when you were younger, understanding that, there's some themes here. There's some stuff. And then having that every time you watch it through the years, you can kind of unpack more of it. And, I'm older now. Not quite Captain Kirk's age, but I'm older now. I guess I know what he was talking about, So, yeah, man, those are.
I'm going back to see the original episode with Ricardo in it.
Yeah.
I guess after that too. But 2 and 3, I think, are like capture the spirit of what the TV show was, in my opinion. My brother was a big Trekkie fan, huge. And for us, like, we definitely, I think it peaked with those. But the 2 and 3 one, the 3 kind of kept it. The old episodes often would have the Trouble with Tribbles, and they were the kind of lighter shows and a little funny. So 3 kind of captured that, I think. Or that's not 3. Sorry, the one where they go to the back to America.
Yeah.
4. Mm-hmm.
That one.
The whales.
The number 4, that one where they came back.
Whales here.
Captures the light one, and 2 and 3 kind of captures that serious tone of the show, where it could be a very serious. You are fully engaged, and and again, classic Ricardo Montalban in that one as well. Yeah, so that makes it. By the way, just really quick, this is it, right? This is
that's it.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, as soon as that popped up, I was like, that's it.
Is it Raquel Welch? I think down there.
As Raquel Welch from 1,000 Years BC.
Yep. This is a big book, man, John and Pat. It's like a pretty, it's a big book, and it just, at least it seemed like a big book because we were little kids, maybe. But thumbing through that thing was like an adventure. You'd sneak and steal out of our dad's thing, and just be like, wow.
It's a good read too. It's a pretty brisk read, but it's good. I mean, if you're a horror movie fan, I think that's pretty essential.
And the interesting thing is the data on that thing is 1973. Mm-hmm. 1973. So all the movies up until that point. So it really gives you a good historical perspective of how they evolved. And I remember the Nosferatu and all the excellent book. I'm going to see if that's out. You still have a copy of that or somewhere or no?
Yes, I do. I found it on eBay years later, and I paid only about $50 for it. I mean,
it's on Amazon too. I looked now as well, and looks like it is on Amazon and some different places too, I think.
Yeah, I was just looking on Amazon real quick. It looks like you can get a used hardcover version. I don't know what kind of condition it's in for like $14. It might not be in great condition. So you can get like a paperback for $30 or. So yeah, there's a few different.
Our version was a hardcover. I remember that. It was a big, just heavy book.
It looks like there's an updated one too. Pictorial History of Horror Movies from 1983. Looks like that one might be.
I think I'll be going to Amazon after we're done here.
See, now this would totally get me into a rabbit hole, because now I'm looking at the related items inspired by your orders, and I'm seeing like the art of pulp horror, the art of horror movies, the art of, I'm like, ugh.
And then you go down a little bit more, and it's like, buy all 3 of these together for this price. And it's not like it's a reduced price. It's just
customers who bought this frequently bought this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Customers who bought this frequently use their entire paycheck.
Must not hit. Buy now. Must not hit. Oh, I did it. Oh, it's all done.
And I'm spent. Literally and figuratively. All right, Rob, last question for you here before we jump into Addams Family. What is your favorite movie we've covered so far? And you can say Blue Velvet and totally blow Pat out of the water here.
I'm so sorry. I really am. I'm just going to say I'm sorry for yucking your yum. I really, truly am.
I don't want to get it give some false sense that Blue Velvet's up there with like one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just it was one of those when I saw it, because I saw The Elephant Man before I saw Blue Velvet, so I already knew that David Lynch was kind of a weird dude, and then I saw Dune in between those two, and I love Dune, and Dune's a weird flipping movie too, but Blue Velvet's weird in a whole different way, and it was one of those that I couldn't wrap my head around for a long time, and then I started doing reading and I saw interviews with David Lynch. So I was like, okay, I get it. So that movie is weird for the sake of being weird and dreamlike, and you either accept it or you don't. So either people have a visceral reaction, Pat, or there's some people who have a reaction like, yeah, I could give or take, and then there's some people that are obsessed with it, and I'm like, okay, those people you've got to watch for. But
watch Eraserhead. Speaking of David Lynch films.
In Eraserhead, when you boil it down, when you tell somebody after they get done watching it and they're just trying to figure out what the heck just happened, you say, it's about being a new dad. That's all it is. And they're like, you got all that from that?
Yeah. That's awesome.
The favorite one, I said most recently, when you guys touched on Jacob's Ladder, and just because that was one of those that I've always kind of had back there as I really love that movie, but it's one that I don't revisit often, and when I do revisit it, I'm like, oh man, that's such a great movie and it holds up. But I think you guys, you guys talked about how much it really, for something you had never seen, had an experience, and just when a movie like that washes over you and then sticks with you, it's stuck with me for 30 years now. And I saw that, again, I saw that when I was way too young, and I didn't fully understand it or appreciate it then. I just remembered it, and I've gone back and rewatched it, and then to listen to you guys cover it and talk about it, and that's again a great example of a good reason to listen to your podcast, because you go back and listen and hearing you guys discover things that I've been familiar with. I'm still want to talk to a few of you behind a brick wall about your opinions of Darkman, but that's another time, another place.
Darkman was Darkman the one where Qui-Gon Jinn lost his face?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean Liam Neeson?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Do you remember what? I don't remember what your opinion was on that one, Pat.
You know what? I think I don't think I had like a visceral, strong reaction. I think I felt torn, because it was like, is it are they going for the silly and goofy, or are they going for this? Like that was what I just kind of remember, that there were some cool parts to it, but then there would be they were almost going for like some silly kind of stuff
That's Sam Raimi, the guy who did Evil. It's the same thing. He's the guy who does all that. He's got that weird.
Yeah.
That was his trial run, is basically for Spider-Man. That was him saying, I want to do a comic book movie, and I want to try a few things out. Yeah, and that's essentially what it is. I mean, it's a paper thin storyline, but it really was for him to try some things with special effects, with some camera techniques. I mean, working with a bigger budget.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, and even like, speaking to folks like yourself, and I don't know how many movies and I think honestly Evil Dead 2 is one of them that I'm like, I don't think I like this movie, but now talking about it and realizing what was happening, you're supposed to be laughing at that part. Then suddenly, kind of through the discussion, that's been one of the best parts of doing this podcast, is through the discussion, like, no, I'm liking this movie now, or, so that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so I'm just going to throw in here, and the guys are going to like duct tape my mouth shut so I don't like take the next 10 hours to ask you about this topic. But I know that you are a journalist, and especially with naval aviation. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to say that's possibly one of the coolest things known to mankind. And so I'm just curious, and I'll ask this like a 12-year-old fanboy. But so do you have a favorite plane that you like, writing about, or that you've seen, or that maybe you've even gotten a ride in, or anything that you would say about?
No, I really don't. I mean, I've seen only a handful of the planes up close. I've never been inside any of the jets.
Okay.
That's not something that they're kind of too keen on. I'm sure it could be arranged, but I don't have the brass to want to even think about doing that. But it's really cool to see them up close. The one thing that I'm most impressed with right now is the newer F-35s. When you hear one of them, mm-hmm. it'll shake you. It'll shake bones that you didn't know you had.
Wow!
And they're the stealth fight. Mm-hmm. You know, they're stealth, but those things are incredibly loud, and it just sounds like. It's very cliche, but it sounds like freedom and death and destruction is coming when you hear one of those things.
Yeah.
But wow. I've only been doing it for a little over a year. Okay. Because of the nature of things, the way the world is, a lot of my interviews and stuff has been over the phone, and so I've gotten to talk to some really cool people. I got to talk to a group of astronauts who. They're now astronauts, and they will be going on the Artemis mission coming up. So I got to talk to them shortly after they graduated because they attended the test pilot school here that is in Maryland. Okay, so that's probably so far the highlight of my brief career in writing about naval aviation. That's cool.
That's cool. So a lot of your writing, is it more to do with like the pilots and like I hate to say the human side of it as opposed to the technical and the planes, or is it kind of a mix of the whole thing? Or
it's more of the technological side of things. Here's the ongoing and developing technologies that the Navy is working on right now. Some things the pilots I have been able to talk to some pilots, both fixed wing jets and rotor wing helicopters. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it is people working behind the scenes and developing the technologies.
Exciting. Is the component of like the drone unmanned and all that kind of as compared to, do we need pilots, the person in the plane, flying with the stick, or do we just need someone sitting at a control? Is that as prevalent of an argument or a debate, or kind of as we get kind of in the civilian world where, you kind of hear it and you'll see even movies about it, good and bad, where this is like a big discussion point. Is that as prevalent, or
There definitely is becoming a little bit more of a focus on man, but I don't see the Navy moving or the military in any way moving away from man versus unmanned debate. I think there's always going to be a need for pilots, and in fact, with the test pilot school and the Naval Academy being right here in Annapolis, in fact, they're still very actively seeking and recruiting pilots. So, okay.
Well, like I said, if these guys don't put me on mute, I'll probably keep peppering you with questions for at least the next 5 days. So anyways, like I said, this is just such a cool opportunity to get to know you and, hear your thoughts on movies and all that kind of stuff. So very cool. John, thank you for indulging me.
Oh, anytime, Pat. You're worth it. All right.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob. All right. Well, Addams Family. We came here to talk about Addams Family, so let's get into that one. The Addams Family, this one came out on the 22nd of November, 1991, rated PG-13, with a runtime of 1 hour, 39 minutes, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who also did the Men in Black movies and Get Shorty. Producer for this one was Scott Rudin, who also did, oddly enough, Regarding Henry, one of our other movies this month, Flatliners and The Firm. Writers for this one, the characters were originally developed by Charles Addams, who died in 1988. Caroline Thompson was also a writer, and Larry Wilson was another writer. Addams, obviously his creations led to the Addams Family TV show and all the other different kind of spin-offs. Thompson did Edward Scissorhands, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and Wilson was also a writer for Beetlejuice and Tales from the Crypt. Cinematography was done by Owen Roisman, who did The French Connection, The Exorcist, and Tootsie. Music was done by Mark Shaman, who did Misery and City Slickers. The budget for this one was $30 million. The box office was $191.5 million. Flickmetrics, which combines Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and Letterboxd scores into an average, gives this one a 66%. CinemaScore gives it a B. starring Anjelica Huston, who played Morticia Addams. She was in The Witches, The Grifters, and This Is Spinal Tap. Raul Julia, who died in 1994, played Gomez Addams. He was in Street Fighter, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and Presumed Innocent. Christopher Lloyd, who played Uncle Fester or Gordon Craven. He was in Back to the Future, Clue, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Dan Hedaya played Tully Alford. He was in The Usual Suspects, Clueless, and Blood Simple. Elizabeth Wilson, who died in 2015, played Abigail Craven, and Dr. Greta Pinderschloss. She was in The Graduate, Regarding Henry, and 9 to 5. Judith Malina, who died in 2015, played Granny. She was in Dog Day Afternoon and The Secret of My Success. Carol Strucken played Lurch, or sometimes we call him Dennis. It was in Twin Peaks, Men in Black, and Gerald's Game. I've always made that joke because I think Dennis, and this is in a very affectionate way, love you too, Dennis, in a very affectionate way, I think that you would make a great Lurch. If we ever did like a school production of the Addams Family, I think you would make a great Lurch.
I just think it's funny that like you roasted this guy in front of 200 people at a staff meeting the other day. That was, I was like, I wonder how the inside jokes are going to run with the, because John was leading a meeting, at our school, and there was John just starts roasting Dennis, and it's just like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
Now you did put the Lurch picture on the, I remember that on the lounge, teacher's lounge. What'd I come back with? What'd I do? I can't remember.
I don't even remember.
It was so good. It was so good. We can't remember.
Because it was a picture. We had a picture of another teacher. Didn't they get featured in like a local news article? And so somebody had drawn like an arrow and said, "This is Jason," and put, Jason's name there. And so I replaced it with a picture of Lurch, and I said, "This is Dennis." And I don't remember what you did for me.
Wasn't it an Alf or something? What the heck was it? It was something like that.
I don't know. Was it Curly from the Three Stooges?
No.
Okay. I mean, I would have taken that as a compliment, but
I don't know. It should have still been left up. Darn it.
Okay.
It was good. Yeah, we've had some good ones going back and forth. I did a little Halloween video when I ran the news, and at the very end of it, it was kind of like a shock jump scare type of thing. And behind the curtain was, we jumped to a close up of John's face.
Yeah.
So he paid me back later that Christmas when they had the big Pep Assembly Day, Spirit Week, whatever, and all that stuff. And it was Ugly Sweater Day. So Ugly Christmas Sweater Day. So what he did was he just wore a regular sweater, and he took a picture of me and put it right on the front. So that was in the Ugly Sweater Day. So, yeah.
Love you, Dennis. So anyway, Lurch, he was also in Twin Peaks, Men in Black, and Gerald's Game. Actually, and I didn't write this down. I think wasn't he also the the personal valet of Laxwana Troy?
Yeah, he was Mr. Hom.
Yeah. Dana Ivey played Margaret Alford. She was in Sabrina, The Color Purple, and Rush Hour 3. Christina Ricci, a very little Christina Ricci, played Wednesday Addams. She was in Mermaids, Now and Then, and Black Snake Moan. Jimmy Workman played Pugsley Addams. He was in Black Sheep and As Good as It Gets. Christopher Hart played Thing. He was in, oddly enough, Idle Hands. And John Franklin played Cousin It. He was in Children of the Corn. When a man claiming to be Fester, the missing brother of Gomez Addams, arrives at the Addams home, the family is thrilled. However, Morticia begins to suspect the man is a fraud since he cannot recall details of Fester's life. With the help of lawyer Tully Alford, Fester manages to get the Addams clan evicted from their home. Gomez realizes the two men are conspiring to swindle the Addams fortune and that he must challenge Fester.
When we first met years ago, it was an evening much like this. Magic in the air. A boy.
A girl.
An open grave.
You were so beautiful, pale and mysterious. No one even looked at the corpse.
Ah! Miss! Wednesday, play with your food.
Is this made from real lemons? Yes. I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
Thing, you're a handful. I've done this before.
This holiday season, they'll make you feel right at home.
Last night, you were like some desperate howling demon. You frightened me. Do it again.
The Addams Family. Sorry. but you'll have to wait until November 22nd.
All right. Well, as we usually start off with these episodes, my first question for each of us is, how does this movie make you feel? Patrick, how's this one make you feel?
Happy? I don't know if that's the right word. Entertained? This movie is just... I'm sorry, I'm just going to use my cliche. It's awesome. It's an awesome movie. It's just a great, fun movie. And we'll get more into it, but I think it does justice to the TV show, but kind of almost what we were talking about with the Star Trek movie. It does justice to the TV show, but then also gives you enough of a new plot that makes it interesting for a movie. And I mean, you heard it in the little, the trailer, the trailer there. It's like all the little statements that they have that makes them, kind of creepy, and they're, and all that kind of stuff. You were a wild demon. You scared me. Do that again. I mean, it's like all those things, they weren't cheesy. It really, really worked in this movie. I don't want to hog the thing, but the casting was fantastic. I mean, my goodness, don't ask me about recasting this movie, because I mean, I'm sure there's people that can do it, but the leads in this movie were just great. So every time I watch this movie, I just get so excited. I remember feeling this way when I first saw it as a kid. So yes, happy joy, and creepy. Do it again.
Rob, what about you? How's this one make you feel?
It makes me feel happy, and also makes me absolutely miss Raul Julia, just because he's just a gifted guy. That was my introduction to him. And shortly around this time, he was also doing Man of La Mancha on stage, and my parents went and saw him and just said just how wonderful he was in that. And then he died a few years later. But I just remember just being super excited about that. I loved the show as a kid, and then I remember all the hype about this movie being Thing, and how Thing was an actual disembodied hand that was running around. And that was early CGI that actually holds up rather well. But happy.
Dennis, what about you?
I'm going to go, fun. Just in that order. Okay. So again, when I say fun, it's a fun movie. When I say it's not like I'm like, wow, it's the most. I can't go. I'm just saying the because I have to have something to contrast with Pat's awesomeness of it. I think the Happy was a good choice. It's a happy, fun movie. I think the sight gags. I think the casting is excellent. I think the script might be a little bit on the weaker side, but the casting and the sight gags and all that stuff just make it a fun movie. So I'm not knocking it in any way, shape, or form. Just trying to tone it down a notch, whatever that rating would be below Pat's awesome, just a tad. I think, and right on with Raul Julia. Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I think it was a stroke. I think he had a stroke or something first, and then ended up dying, either complications from the stroke or whatever. But yeah, he's perfectly, just a great cast from top to bottom. I think on this one, I can't think of anybody that would cast it for any of those roles. Even a perfect find, like finding a little Christina Ricci, like as a child actor, and then seeing how kind of weird she was in real life in many ways too. It's like, wow, that's like perfectly well cast.
These characters, and John, you got to give your reaction. So I promise to keep it short, but I mean, these characters, they looked like they were really having fun playing these roles. And that sounds like something that someone like myself that's uneducated when it comes to movies would say, oh, just have fun with it. I mean, I know that it's work and it's practice and there's a science and all that, but they looked like these were really enjoyable roles for them to play.
And I think having you have the TV show, and we grew up on the TV show, and people grew up, and I'm sure they grew up on the TV show and watching all that stuff. And it's like, then they get to play those characters. It has to be kind of fun, exciting for them. And the risk there is, because we have that experience with the TV show, I think like the Flintstones, when they did the Flintstone version of the movie, it's like, it could be a complete letdown. And I think in this case, it's not. And what I mean by that, it wasn't like, it was bad. It was just, that's the script category, like not the greatest story in the world or anything, but it didn't need a great script because they did everything else so well and brought those characters to person in a movie theater, the ones that we remembered from childhood. They didn't do it any disservice. You didn't end up going, man, I wish it was the old TV show people working up there. You totally were able to buy in with these people being all those characters, with him being, Mr. Addams. Like it all worked. There wasn't like, man, I missed the other guy. I missed the guy. You could still appreciate the TV show and you could still appreciate the movie. And I think that's why it works so well versus you going, man, I'll go back and watch the TV show. No, thank you. Like, I don't think the Flintstones had that, with what's his name, John Goodman, all that. I don't think it had the same sort of feel to it when you think of any, and I'm trying to think of any movies that have gone from that classic TV show to that,
Yeah.
So I think it did a good service as far as like bringing it to the screen like that. So it was a fun movie, and like I said, I agree with the visual effects and stuff. I think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, and I'm going to give my reaction, but I did want to jump in real quick since you mentioned Christina Ricci and you mentioned the actors kind of clearly loving these roles or clearly just being totally invested in these roles. And a couple of things that, as I was reading up about this movie, that I was so impressed with, particularly Christina Ricci being so young when she made this movie, was apparently a lot of the things that became so much of the Wednesday character, like she did on her own without necessarily having somebody coach her. Like the whole thing of Wednesday, sleeping like a corpse where she crosses her arms, that was her. Like she came up with that. Originally, the way the movie was going to go was they were going to keep Gordon as an imposter, that he wasn't the real Fester at all. And they said cast members started to push back on that. They're like, no, that we can't do that. And I think Barry Sonnenfeld, I forget what interview it was or where it was, but he made a point of saying that surprisingly, the person that gave him the most eloquent, and he didn't say what she said, the most eloquent reason for him to ultimately be the real Fester at the end of the movie was little Christina Ricci. He said, all the other cast members talked to me. They told me it's got to be the real Fester. You got to change the ending of this movie. And whatever it was she said, that apparently is what changed his mind so that it ultimately would end up being the actual character of Fester. So, yeah, clearly, I mean, even a young kid like that, making her impact on this movie.
Well, and what's interesting about her playing that role too is, like I said, we all had a reference point of, and again, I'm sure she could have watched the TV show and probably did something, but like at that age, I mean, was she really watching the Addams Family and growing up on that? I don't know. Maybe she did his research, but like to be able to pull that role off the way she did without having, like everybody else had a reference point of like, they knew what the old TV show was like, and they could kind of figure out how they want to do that. And I feel like, did she have more of a blank canvas with it and really bring all that weirdness to it? Or did she really? I don't know. She couldn't have had the same. I don't know. Maybe she did. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see. And then you got to throw a shout out to Anjelica Huston, just fabulous in that role. I think she's excellent. Sometimes people don't. I don't know if they don't. The other kind of, some of the other roles get priority, but she's excellent in that.
So my reaction to the movie is, this movie, how does it make me feel? Unhappy. Completely. I love this movie. Like, this movie is so much fun. And I use that as my answer because that's one of the things I really enjoy about this movie. And as soon as I can get my daughter to not be freaked out by some of the scary makeup and other stuff that she doesn't like about this movie, she will absolutely love the kind of the puns and the wordplay of the Addams Family. Like, she loves language and she loves hearing people play with language, and she loves to do that herself. And as much as she complains about it, whenever I make the dad jokes and the puns and the other stuff, she's right there, and like she'll keep it going with me. And I think just so much of the stuff in the movie, Thing, you're a handful, and just little things like that. Or, just the complete, she would love the line, is this made with real lemons? The one that was in the trailer. If you'll buy some of my Girl Scout cookies, are they made with real Girl Scouts? Like, she would love that kind of stuff. So, and that's the same stuff I love about this one. And what I loved about the old TV show was just kind of the absurd, whatever it is, take it and make it the opposite, and make it creepy and make it weird and make it whatever. And I remember as a kid, that's what kind of drew me to this show. I was like, Yeah. So whatever. So if happy would be the right answer to that question, then they're going to say unhappy because that's what they do. They just do everything opposite and they do everything weird and whatnot. So that's my response to this one is I remember as a kid watching the TV show on reruns. I don't know if it was Nick at Night or where we were watching it, but we used to watch that one. We used to watch the Munsters. And as a kid, I probably was a bigger fan of the Munsters. But when this movie came out, I was like, they're making a movie, The Addams Family? Are you kidding me? That's awesome. We got to go see it. So we would have seen it in the theater. And yeah, I remember watching this several times growing up as a kid. But so completely unhappy is how this movie makes me feel.
That's a good quick question right away. Just I don't know if you throw it in there later, but really it doesn't have to take long. But Munsters or Addams Family TV show?
That's one of our 3 questions.
It is okay. Yeah. I didn't see it was one of those.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll do that one later.
Email.
Definitely not the Here Come the Munsters 1995 movie though. We can totally skip that one. No, not at all. Anytime soon or ever. All right. Well, so with this one, we start off in the movie, and kind of the basic premise of this movie is it has been 25 years since Fester has been in the Addams house. He has gone missing somehow, and there was a bit of a falling out. We find out, and we find out eventually that it was because Gomez was, kind of jealous of his success with women, is what he says, and I think the time works out correctly if you backtrack it from 91. 25 years back was at the time that the original TV show had ended. If I'm remembering that correctly, I think it was 1966. So that would have been 25. Yeah, that would have been 25 years. So if that's the case, then you could argue and say, well, I guess the premise of this movie is that it's 25 years, the TV show maybe is canon, quote unquote canon for this movie. And this is supposed to be 25 years later. And he's disappeared. He's gone. They haven't seen him. They continue to have these seances. And then you kind of mix in the plot of the attorney trying to get the money out of them. And then all of a sudden this Dr. Pinderschloss is her fake name, which I did look it up. And apparently Pinderschloss is a kind of a German phrase that can mean like nut house. So she's supposed to be a psychiatrist named Dr. Nuthouse. And so she kind of hatches this plan with her, adopted son, Gordon, that magically looks exactly like Fester, just with curly hair. And their plan is they're going to go steal the Addams money, steal their gold by, having him impersonate as Uncle Fester in the family. We already started to talk a little bit about some of the actors in this movie. You mentioned Anjelica Huston. I know originally they had talked about having Cher possibly play this role. So that was one option. And I think I think they made the right choice. Like you said, I can't see anybody else in these roles. I know they've done a cartoon recently. There's probably been, talk of remaking one of these movies or remaking another Addams Family movie. But to my mind, the way this movie is made and the way that the Addams Family kind of sets itself up as being a weird, out of time kind of story anyway, it's one of those, I don't think you need to make a remake. Mm-hmm. I think we talked, that was quite a while ago. I had found some article that said, here are the 3 reasons that you could make a remake. Your 3 arguments for making a remake to something. And one of them was, do you need to update it for the times or something like that? Like that would be one of the reasons is, does it need an updating because of something about the modern world, something about it needs to be updated. But this one is when you watch this movie, it's almost like time doesn't really matter. It's one of those movies where this could be 1966, this could be 1996, this could be 2016. It really doesn't matter. This movie holds up regardless of what the year is. How did you feel about that? Especially, I think all of us here had watched the original TV show. How did you feel maybe the first time you saw this movie or rewatching it this most recent time about that being the premise for this movie was Uncle Fester's been gone for 25 years and now all of a sudden he's back. But it's this weird imposter. How did that strike you the first time you kind of realized that was the plot of this movie and where this is going?
Rob, why don't you answer that question first? Guests go first.
Sure. I remember that Dennis brought up that the script was definitely not the strongest part of this movie, and I do think that was the flimsy thing holding the movie together. You know, how do we introduce this family? But you know, if you watch the TV show, Uncle Fester was there, but he wasn't the focus. You know, it was always Gomez and Morticia, and the kids were more the focus. And Uncle Fester just kind of showed up every once in a while and, you know, put a light bulb in his mouth, did something wacky. So to make him the central focus of it, had they not cast Christopher Lloyd in the Uncle Fester role, I don't think it would have worked. But because it's Christopher Lloyd and he's definitely having a blast playing this, I think it worked. But I definitely remember sitting in the theater and I'm like, well, obviously that's going to be Uncle Fester. He's the real Uncle. So there was absolutely no surprise to me, you know, or to anybody, I don't think, in the audience, that of course he was the real Uncle Fester all along. You don't cast Christopher Lloyd for, you know, a movie this big and then just say, oh no, we were just kidding the whole time. So I definitely think if it hadn't been for everything else, I mean, that plot point probably could, if you didn't have the right person for it. It's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that same thing. I mean, it's just, I guess when you're saying holding it together, I think it's, in a way, the characters, the cast, and all the other visual effects are what hold a weak script together. That's really, I think you don't notice it as much, and you're less critical of it because the other things kind of trump that. But yeah, I would agree. Mm-hmm. And Christopher Lloyd, yeah.
And I think somebody mentioned earlier about the kind of the CGI. Rob, I think you might have mentioned about the CGI in the movie, you know, with Thing and you know, doing all that, and it's pretty good. I mean, it holds up pretty well, and and I even remember that as a kid, like even thinking that, wow, this looks, you know, sometimes it looked a little fake in the old TV show and in other things that I've seen, but this is pretty good. I don't know what hand model they cast to be Thing, but.
Yeah, it was actually a magician. I remember that being the big thing. It was like, oh, it's a magician doing all that. And apparently he also showed up in Idle Hands later on in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that this, you know, they were making such a big deal of this magician being able to act with his hands. So, you know, that was a big thing that I remember them hyping up as before the movie coming out. It was like you're going to see so much more personality out of Thing that you ever did on the TV show. And, you know, I just remember Thing being on the TV show. I was like, oh, that was Ted Cassidy's hand when he wasn't Lurch. He was the hand. He was Thing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, you know, I think the stuff that they change, because that's always, I don't know, that's always slippery slope, dangerous. You know, that could be the third rail of making movies. You know, you take a beloved TV show, you change some things because you have to change some things. You have to make the movie bigger and better, right? I mean, in some ways than a show. Otherwise, that could be a criticism of, well, I'll say it, like sometimes the criticism of some of the Star Trek movies are, this is kind of like one of the television episodes just kind of glorified, right? You want the movie to somehow be a little bit different, a little bit more special and all that. And I think they did that. I mean, and it's funny, you know, now that you mention it, I totally forgot that Thing was in a box in the TV show until you just brought it up. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Thing was like a pet running around. That's completely, you know, and I'd totally forgotten that. But yeah, I remember when I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking, well, this is turned up to 11. This is different. This isn't the way that I remember. And I think isn't that when the phrase came out, this isn't your father's Addams Family. This is a brand new one. I mean, I'm kind of mixing my phrases here, but I mean, I think they did enough of the movie to kind of like turn it up a little bit. The creepiness and that, you know, it was at one level in the show. The movie got a little bit more into the macabre, not completely over the top, but I mean, just, I know they said that they were thinking about trying to get Tim Burton to direct this, but it was almost like when Tim Burton would take a look at things, right? Okay, Tim Burton does Batman, and what happens? It takes a step towards the dark, right? In terms of the creepiness. Okay. His movie. So I know this wasn't Tim Burton, but that's kind of what this had. It like just took that creepiness and scariness and all that and kind of upped it just a little bit, just to make you a little bit more on the edge of your seat, just to make it bigger than what it was in the TV show. And I thought they did just enough to like, oh wow, this is different. This isn't the Addams Family that I remember from Nick at Night, but not so much that you get turned off or, oh, come on guys, really? This is, and we talked about, would you redo it now? That would just be my fear is like, I'd be fine if you had another round of actors that just say, hey, I don't know if we can do better, but I want another crack at it. Yeah. Okay. Have at it. Let's see, different actors and actresses in these roles. But I would just worry that they would want to take it too far. They would want to take that creepy and kind of like, and make it like trying to gross you out a little bit too much. Or, I mean, those wonderful scenes with, Morticia and what's Mr. Addams' name?
Gomez.
Yeah. Morticia and Gomez, whenever, Tish, you're speaking French. And then she says something. And then all of a sudden they remember their second honeymoon. And then all of a sudden they're like, let's just say the romance is still alive in the marriage. And that's awesome. I would just be worried now that if they did it, they would want to make it like really, okay, you're showing us too much. That show us just enough that like, leave something to the imagination. And I think this movie does that. They up it enough, but they leave enough to your imagination that it's not like, okay, that's too much. I'm done watching now. And I think it's pretty cool. I think they struck a really good balance in it.
There is a really funny episode. I've talked about this before on the show. My wife and I love the TV show Mad About You. And there is a really funny episode where John Astin becomes their upstairs neighbor. And the entire time, they keep talking about him. They mention him a couple of times during the episode. And then at some point they get locked out of their apartment and they end up on the roof. And John Astin is up there having dinner with a date or his girlfriend or whatever. And they've spent the entire time, you are him, aren't you? And he's like, yes, I am. And the other one says, no, you're not him, are you? No, I'm not. And it's just this whole absurd thing where he keeps this back and forth. But then he starts, he'll start playing some music. He'll start dancing, doing all the other stuff that Gomez Addams would do. And he, at one point, one of them says, I think the Helen Hunt, the wife says, well, it is time for us to say goodnight. So I really must say au revoir. And he's like, you can't fool me. That's French. And they do all the same kind of gags, but it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
It got me. Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things about this is it brings in so much of, if you were a fan of the TV show, there's just so many little Easter eggs, or there's so many little little reminders of what you loved about the TV show that are just peppered throughout this movie, so that if you're coming to this brand new, if you'd never seen Addams Family before, it's still a fun movie. It's still gonna be a fun movie for kids, and I think it's for that age. When I first saw this, I would have been about 10. And so I think that's just right around the time where you can really start to get some of the dark humor, but it's not so dark. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not so dark that it's inappropriate. But it's just, you're just at that age where you're starting to be able to get, some of the little jokes or some of the little comments in here. And yet it balances it by not being overly gruesome, when doing that. So that's one of the things I appreciate about this movie too.
The talent show notwithstanding.
Well,
all the people sitting in the audience. Yeah. Oh man, that was funny.
Yeah. Now in this, I got a question for you guys, because I've always kind of wondered this. So I want to find out what you think your answer is for this. And this is general. This is not even necessarily specific to this movie. Are the Addams Family supernatural? I've heard some people say Morticia is probably a vampire, and Lurch is like a Frankenstein monster. And, you know, I've heard all these different things, you know, from time to time. And, well, how could a real human withstand electrical shocks and withstand all this other stuff? What do you guys think? You think the Addams Family, are they supernatural in some way, or are they just weird, kooky human beings that can somehow withstand electrical shocks and torture and arrows and all kinds of other stuff?
The reaction to your question is I always thought, that there was a little something different, and not just like that they were normal people, that there was something, that they were a different, she was a vampire, you know, that he was more Frankenstein. Like that type of, So that's just my first gut reaction when you asked that question that quickly. And I would think, I thought that's what I always thought, I think, from TV show on to movie as well. I mean, Fester, I mean, who do you know? I mean, So
Wednesday.
They're not if there was a DNA or some sort of autopsy, there would be something different about them.
Wednesday, where are you going with that? To stab Pugsley? I don't think so. He pulls out like the huge like butcher knife thing, or not a butcher knife. That's like an axe.
Yeah. To me, it's just like the Munsters, where what's her name's the only one that's normal.
Right.
That's right. The niece.
Is it Mary? Wait, what's her name?
Well, I was just going to say it's the niece, right? Isn't it her?
Yeah, Denise. Okay, I thought you said Denise. I'm like, I thought, isn't it like what's her name from Munster? Is it Marilyn?
Yeah, it was Marilyn. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like she's like a normal human being, and somehow I don't know how she got in the family with all them. Mm-hmm. That's not like they were, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's the same sort of feeling for the Addams Family, is that they were all kind of that weird, different.
Well, and because clearly in the Munsters, they were supernatural. Like Grandpa was a vampire. Was it Eddie was a wolf boy? Yeah.
Wolf boy. Yeah. Frankenstein, and then she was a vampire. Yeah.
Rob, what's your take on that? Are they supernatural, or are they just normal humans?
I just always thought them as, freaks. Mm-hmm. That they were just different. And I'd never thought about it as a supernatural element. I just thought that, their house was where all the monsters live, and the monsters are happy, and the monsters, kind of protected them. That's how I looked at it as I was a kid. I was like, leave the Addams people alone. If you somehow get into their house is going to protect them. So leave them alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as we get a little bit further on into the movie here, Gordon / Fester kind of gets, he gets in with the family, and I think you kind of see a little bit of a blurring of, some of the lines there, as it seems like from time to time that maybe he really is Fester, but we're not entirely sure. And we've got that scene where he's helping the kids prepare the sword fighting sequence for their school play, which if I was directing a school play, I'd totally do that one.
Yeah.
A little bit of Shakespeare, a little bit, and then we get to the point where the Addams are going to they find out that Fester is the executor of the estate, and so the Addams are actually going to get evicted from their house, because if he's Fester, he pretty much owns everything. And so they actually do, because the judge from the beginning that didn't like golf balls, getting hit towards his house, happens to be the judge that is handling this case and rules against them. So they are ousted from the mansion, and then the freaks of the Addams Family have got to go get real jobs, and they're staying in a motel. And love that scene where Morticia becomes the school teacher. And I had read about when they had the kids sitting in that room and they've got that scene, the one part where they get the kids to all start crying at once was they left the cameras rolling, and I don't know if it was Barry Sonnenfeld or somebody else came in and said, "Kids, that scene, you guys did a great job. Now everybody sit still. We're going to go get some needles, and you're all going to get your vaccinations."
Measles.
Oh, jeez.
It was the measles. Yeah.
The Sonnenfeld said that, yep.
You're going to get your measles vaccination. And they said, like, one kid realized what they were saying and started crying, and then the rest of them, it was almost like dominoes, that just all of a sudden, all the kids in the room were like, no. They did just completely, the entire room lost it. And they're like, nope, we're just keep rolling. Just keep rolling.
That's cold, man. That's cold.
So they do, and that's the scene where Wednesday and Pugsley are trying to sell the lemonade, and Thing, I think, becomes a messenger of some kind, and Gomez is just not doing well. So he's not handling this very well, and ultimately through series of events, they find out what's going on. They find out that, he's been impersonating Fester, and then he will, they're not going to give up the family fortune without a fight. So they use one of the magical books in the library, which, having been an English teacher and a wife who's a librarian, that was kind of a fun part too. Like all the different books that have the different effects. There was the Sun Also Rises. Was that the one where he's getting a tan and he's holding the book open? Yeah. And then the first one was Gone with the Wind earlier in the movie. And then the one they ultimately end up using was the history of Hurricane. I forget what it was, but it was like history
Irene.
of, yes, Hurricane Irene. Yeah. And that was just fun, like just to see that kind of stuff, and just so much fun. Just all the little quirky, weird things that are kind of like you guys said. It's like, even if they're normal people, everything around them is supernatural and weird, and they don't need to be supernatural themselves. They just, Rob, I think you just said it a minute ago, like they live surrounded by the supernatural, and that's fine. Like that's all you need. You don't need to go any further than that.
And the movie did some fun treatments for that, especially when, and I wanted to ask you guys this because we were talking about Evil Dead before, when what do they call when the Deadites are coming, right? And you just get that view where the camera's on the ground and it's like, and it's zooming up and over things, but it's from the ground. I don't know if that was a common horror thing or if that movie really started it. But they use that with Thing, when it's like, knock again. Wait, Fester's here. And all of a sudden, whoop, Thing jumps up and is like running through the house. And that's the view you get. And it's just funny because, in any other movie, that's like a horror technique that'll, scare you out of your socks. But in this, it's like, Thing is really excited, and it's, in a way, that kind of brings you into the way that the Addams family look at things. What we all look at as creepy and scary, they look at as normal. What we would consider an insult, they'll be able to, reverse it, right? Is he just a dreamer, a lazy, a bum? And not anymore. Has he been coughing up blood? Not like he used to.
Not like he used to.
Yeah, and I'm going way scattershot on what I'm saying, but again, why can't I think of her name? Morticia. Who played Morticia?
Anjelica Huston.
Perfect delivery. I mean, those lines, if they weren't delivered the way she did, with the way her voice sounded, the way she looked, everything. I mean, I think that would have fallen flat, but all these little throwaway lines, that's what the Addams do. It doesn't matter whether they're supernatural or whether they're just regular people that like the creepiness and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, that's the way they kind of turned the world on its ear. And when you got that scene of Thing running through the house, any other movie, that's scary because, like I said, and please tell me, I mean, was it the first time you see that is when the Deadites are zooming over and now we'll get that same camera technique. But now it's like, oh, it's Thing. Thing's on our side. Thing's our pet. We like you're starting to see things like the Addams are seeing things, and that was just a cool little treatment in there. I thought when that happened.
When you get the tire screeching sound when he tries to round the corner.
Yes.
So it's not meant to be scary at all when a hand is making tire screeching noises, taking the turn.
Right. Thing, you're a handful.
So we ultimately, I remember as a kid just laughing out loud at that whole scene at the end where they're kind of, where the two of them, God, I'm blanking on their names. Tully and Abigail are thrown out of the window and into the open graves that have been dug by Pugsley and Wednesday. I just thought that was so funny as a kid. I don't know why that got me as a kid, but I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I know. They start, let's bury them. Are they dead? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, no, that's the Monsters I'm singing. Yeah, whoops. Yeah. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da.
Yeah. And then you finish off the movie itself. It kind of ends with jumping ahead, I think it's like 6 or 7 months, and it's Halloween, and they kind of bring it up that Gordon was really Fester all along, and some of the different stories that were that they thought was made up actually being true, and that he had been suffering from amnesia, but he's being recovered. He got struck by lightning, so he's getting his memories back now. And I think the final thing is the kids they go play Wake the Dead, and and then they kind of announce that Morticia is pregnant, and then that's the end of the movie. And that's kind of where we go from there. Now, Rob, you mentioned this, and this might have been before we started recording. You had mentioned, so I'm curious to know a little bit more about this, and we'll probably do this movie in a couple of years, but you had mentioned that you might actually like Addams Family Values better than this movie.
Yes, and I have to go back. I just remember the script was stronger. They now that they've set up all the characters and everything, they just got on with it, and I just remember it being joke, and of course they gave a very sizable more screen time to Christina Ricci's Wednesday, because her and Pugsley get a camp, so it was another fish out of water, but putting Christina Ricci already has, Wednesday Addams has the best lines in this one, and she has a dictionary full of them in the second one. So I think they realized she stole the movie. She steal the movie away from established actors, and here's this 10-year-old girl. So they realized, and they really made the focus more on the children. So I think that's probably why. I mean, I thought Christina Ricci was adorable, and I remember seeing Casper and saying, "Oh, her career's over," and then she was in Addams Family Values, and I still laugh. Was watching it last night. And she's sitting there with Pugsley, and she's strapping him in the electric chair. She said, "We're going to play a game." And he goes, "Well, what's the game?" She says, "Called Is There a God?" And it's just perfect deadpan delivery. And that still makes me laugh. And of course, the Girl Scout cookies line still makes me laugh. But she has the best laughs in the movie, and they really did lean into that more in the sequel.
It was about the lemonade. It was the is this made with real lemons? And I'll have some if you buy some of my Girl Scout cookies. Is it made with real Girl Scouts?
Yeah, that's it.
And like you said, just the deadpan delivery of all of that. I lived for a stretch of time in England, so I love a good dry delivery of something, and that to me is probably the best thing about her character and that part is just it's the way. And you brought up a couple of the other ones. It's the way she says it. We're going to play a game. What's the game called? Is There a God? And it's just, there's like no emotion, but it's perfect. And how a 10-year-old was able to do that and do that so well, it's a testament to her as an actor. Mm-hmm. Well, as we start to wrap things up, my next question for us is, do you have, we can kind of combine these together a little bit. Do you have a favorite scene or do you have a favorite quote in the movie? I mean, there's tons of like little one-liners and stuff like that in this movie, but do you have a favorite scene? Do you have a favorite quote?
One quote, dirty pool, old man.
Probably for me, it has to be the Shakespeare reenactment on the stage.
How all occasions do inform against me and spur my dull revenge. Oh, from this time forth, my thoughts be bloody or nothing worth. If I must strike you dead, I will. A hit! A very powerful hit! Oh, proud death! What feast is torn in thine eternal cells? Sweet oblivion, open your arms!
Just because you don't know, unless you've seen the movie before, if you don't know what's coming, and then when that happens, And the reaction, the good wide shot of the audience in the front, it looks like they've just seen Sweeney Todd. And they're just covered in blood, and the looks on their face. It's a great shot, and it's something you think that, you know what, on a good day, if I think I could get away with it, I would definitely let my kids do that.
Yeah. So you were asking, are they supernatural or regular people? Here's what I'll ask. When Fester wired that up for them, do you think that was real blood in there? Maybe not human blood, but you think it was like, some kind of weird animal blood that grandmama had, in her kitchen or whatever?
Oh, I bet it was real blood.
I would just think that would make that scene outstanding.
Yeah, I bet it's real blood, because, I mean, they go through that whole thing where she's unpacking his bag earlier, and they get to the cyanide. She's like, Fester, as if we would run out.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, her delivery is just so mouthwateringly awesome.
For her, and I don't know if I'm going to say, I don't know if this is my favorite. There's just so many quotes in the movie, so I'm not even sure I could narrow it down. But one of the scenes that I laugh at every single time, and it always catches me every single time, and I know I've heard it so many times already, is they're going through and, what was it? It was Uncle Knick-Knack. This is Uncle Knick-Knack's winter wardrobe. This is Uncle Knick-Knack's summer wardrobe. Oh, Uncle Knick-Knack.
And they spread those out. Like, I was listening in the trailer, because sometimes the knock on those movies are, hey, all the funny stuff in the trailer. In this, you get a good dosage of it, but you realize that it's just like they keep that coming pretty consistently. They're always reminding you that the Addams see things a little bit differently than everybody else. And it never gets stale, and they never use it up, and it never gets like, oh, here we go again, a quippy one-liner. It's all, it's always fresh. That must be, I don't know. You guys tell me. Is that just down to the actors that can bring these characters to life? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, well, because, I mean, as we've already said, that I think it's just, you have these amazing actors, and who would you, like we've said already, who would you put in these parts other than these actors? You wouldn't, I can't think of anybody other than Anjelica Huston to play that part. Anybody other than Raul Julia. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so good.
Were there any other scenes? Anybody have any other scenes or any other quotes in particular that you really like?
I don't know. I don't know if it's, again, hard. Coming up with a scene for me is harder. I mean, there's so many quotes, and it's just, like I said, so many different, just the gag lines. But I liked where when they were playing with the electric, where he's about to electrocute him, how they play it off like when you got kids and you got to go somewhere. It was the children, what are you doing? I'm going to electrocute him, but we're late for the charity auction. But mother, I said, no, please. And that was, all right. Just kind of like how that would be like a normal situation with your kids leaving, but here they're about to, like, the whole electrocution thing. So it was just a little quirky stuff like that. I think the chemistry between Gomez and Morticia too is just classic. Lines when we first met, years ago, and it was for first funeral, I think.
That's right.
Grave, you were so beautiful, pale and mysterious. No one even looked at the corpse.
That's
like, it's just like so it's hard to pick. It's just like all those little moments. That's why it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Where's your Halloween costume, darling? This is my costume. I'm a homicidal maniac. They look like everyone else.
Yeah.
What was the one with her with the college too? With college first was the we should talk about the witch, the picture of her
great aunt
burning the witch and dancing around or something naked, or whatever. The teacher's like, really, and something like, oh yeah, but don't worry, we've told Wednesday college first.
Yeah.
And this student chose the president, and this student changed so and so.
Jane Pauley.
Jane Pauley. Have you talked to her parents? Have you spoken to the child's parents? Oh man, just great writing, just great stuff.
And that's why I get, again, it's like, this it would have been great to have an awesome script. Yeah. But it doesn't really, you don't feel that. I mean, you just go, yeah, it would have been nice to have a better script. I'm trying to think of another movie that I feel that same way. That's like, yeah, the script's weak, but man, that's just fun. I mean, like, honestly, Caddyshack have a great script? In terms of like a storyline or a plot? No. There's nothing like really groundbreaking there. But it's just all these little things strung together in a perfect cast, and I think it's sort of that feeling of like I can forego the script if you're going to give me all that, because so many other places or movies might have better stories and scripts but horribly acted or just there's not chemistry, and I think this just had all the other pieces it needed to make you forget about the script.
Yeah,
it was a critical look at the script that's going to make you go walk out and say I didn't like that movie. And I forgot who was it, Rob, that you said, or who it was. I think it was Rob that said about if it wasn't for, because there was the big focus on Fester, and that if it wasn't, what's his name playing? Christopher Lloyd playing that could have been a total like disaster, because you were going to focus on that character as much for the whole thing. And if we didn't like Uncle Fester, the facial expressions that he did were just amazing.
Yeah.
So I think if you don't have that, then that makes you focus more on the script, as a negative and taking away from the enjoyment of the movie. But obviously we've all enjoyed this one. So and that's why I'll come back. I think I said fun at the beginning. I said fun, and was for the script, and fun was for just fun movie.
Yeah.
All right.
One thing I did want to mention, I think, Rob, you and I think we're talking about this before we started the recording, but before we jump into our 3 questions, it is kind of a miracle that this movie actually got made, because there were so many things that happened during the production of this movie. And at different times, I want to say, did they go through 3 directors of photography? At least 2, I think it was, because the first one quit a few months in. The second one got sick. I feel like Barry Sonnenfeld himself, didn't he have like chest pains and have to get rushed to the hospital at one point?
Yeah, the stress of it was what almost killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, literally almost killed him. So yeah, that was something I was doing some research, but they were having rights issues like hanging over the whole production. So when they finally got the rights signed over, it was like rushed, and I think the only thing that absolutely nobody can argue about outside of casting is the production design is outstanding for the movie. So I think they probably had enough time saying that they were hoping to get this movie going so they could actually spend time getting the look right. Because I mean, that's probably why the script was so weak. It was like, throw it together as quick as possible. Let's get it moving.
Well, I feel like, to your point about the production issues and the rights for this, because the movie started off being made by Orion Pictures, and they had even though they'd had some big successes, I think in the couple of years before this, they also had a lot of flops. And I think when this one started to run over budget, they kind of realized they weren't going to be able to continue funding this movie. And I believe they sold it to Paramount, if I remember that correctly. And even I want to say even most of the cast and crew did not realize that it had been sold to a completely different studio, in the midst of, I think this came towards the end of making the movie, but I think they didn't quite realize that, partway through, they actually were working for a completely different studio at that point. Because Orion, I think, thought that this was not going to be as successful as it ended up being. And so they just sold it and kind of cut their losses at that point. All right. Do we have anything else we want to say about this one before we go into our 3 questions? No? Fun movie?
Yeah.
Fun movie. All right. And then 2 more years from now, we'll do Addams Family Values. That one was 1993, so we'll have that one coming up in 2023. It just sounds weird to say. So let's go ahead and jump on into our 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
All right, 3 questions. Question number 1, who is your favorite member of the Addams Family? And you can expand that to TV show, movies, whatever you want. Who is your favorite member of the Addams Family?
Yeah, Rob, go ahead first. Go ahead first.
In this movie, Wednesday, but always on the show, I always like Gomez Addams. I just did.
Yeah, I'm going to go close. I thought he was going to say what I was going to say. But yeah, Wednesday for this movie, Wednesday, she has the best lines and best delivery and everything else. And then for the TV show, it was actually Jackie Coogan playing Fester.
My vote's for Morticia. I think Anjelica Huston just brings it. I can't compare because Raul Julia brings it. Well, Christopher Lloyd brings it. Well, yeah, I thought all her mannerisms just and I think for me it was because all of it was she wasn't playing over the top. It was kind of the it was like a, what is it? Speak softly but carry a big stick. I mean, that was it. All of her stuff was just so very subtle and just kind of slipped in there, and it was like, oh, that's awesome, right? And so I thought, for me, she really. And
isn't the tiebreaker for you really the vampire goth fetish that you used to tell me about years ago?
Well, yeah, Dennis, that's exactly right. That was, what can I say?
She vaguely resembled Monica Bellucci in this movie.
I don't know, but I'm glad that's going.
Dressed up like that again for you.
Yeah, I know. There was that one time, that one time on our road trip to Transylvania, that one night at Fright Fest, Dennis.
Yeah.
Well,
that wasn't Great America either. We had our own little.
Oh man,
go ahead, edit this stuff out, John.
Well, between Morticia Addams, Lily Munster, and Elvira, I don't think I stood a chance as a kid into finding women who are dark and macabre and attractive in all the right ways.
Yeah,
as my type.
I do joke, but Lily Munster was. Did like Lily Munster as a kid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Pat, if any of that is true, there's a TV show I've got for you on HBO called True Blood that you might enjoy.
True Blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go check that one out.
All right. The guys just Rob and Dennis just like almost fell off their chairs laughing when you said True Blood. So I'll check out the trailers and see.
Yeah, you won't sleep.
Is this going to be like one of those things that like I watch 20 minutes of a horror movie and then have to watch The Matrix 3 times in a row just to wash?
No. It's not even a horror TV show.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like, and actually I read the first book. It's kind of like trashy romance novels, but with vampires and werewolves and fairies.
Oh, so it's like the adult version of that book series that came out when everyone was
very adult.
Okay.
Yes. So if you've got a thing for vampires, this is the show for you.
Like an adult version of Twilight a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Twilight, yeah. Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And you probably will be fine with it because you're a fan of Wolverine and the X-Men, and the main actress in the show is Anna Paquin from she was Rogue in the X-Men movies. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you, trashy romance novels. I mean, that's like right up my alley. That's what I'm into. I mean, that's second only to romantic, like rom-droms or com-bombs or whatever the heck that kind of stuff that I don't want. Whatever. Okay. The joke's done. I'm done. I'm in the grave. Bury me. Am I alive? Doesn't matter. Okay. I'm done.
And we don't even notice the corpse.
Morticia Addams.
There you go. Yeah, my answer for this one is probably going to be, I'm probably going to go either Morticia or Wednesday. I'm going to just have to go with you guys and just say Morticia or Wednesday in the movie. I love both of their deliveries. Like, it really doesn't matter for me. Both of them are excellent. So movie-wise, that one. My favorite in the TV show as a kid was, and so here, maybe this can redeem me picking on you all the time, Dennis. My favorite character in the TV show was always Lurch.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say Lurch.
Yeah, I always Lurch to me it was just funny, just every time, like, roll his eyes and
Lurch fetish.
Yes. Yes. Dennis, that's why you and I hang out so much, probably.
So did that bother you with them in the movie making Lurch mute and not saying anything?
I remember as a kid missing that because my dad would kind of jokingly do the, if I would, if I'd ask for something or if I'd come into the room and be like, Dad, and every once in a while he'd be like, you rang. And he would do that kind of thing. And I remember in the movie, he'd be like, he never said that in the movie.
I know.
That's what he's supposed to say.
That was really funny.
Yeah.
Did the Munsters have a butler, personal assistant, valet?
No.
Okay.
They had a dragon under the stairs, but
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That I remember the stairs coming up and. Well, I mean, we gave a bunch of shout outs.
Like the chauffeur, like the driver.
Yeah. You know what? Favorite characters, and I'm just going to break the rule and start listing everybody. But I mean, how can we not mention Raul Julia and Christopher Lloyd? Just talk about like that, just utter top shelf, 10 out of 10 performances. I mean, in this, and it's like they all play a different angle, right? Like Gomez Addams is acted big, that's huge. And Morticia, she acts small, and then Christopher Lloyd acts weird. It's really they're covering all the different angles, and it fits together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, right? It just really works.
All right, question number 2, and we kind of started to get into this a little bit earlier. Addams Family or the Munsters? I will say for me as a kid, I loved both. Like we watched, when the reruns were on, whether it was Nick at Night or whatever it was, I forget how we were watching it. But when we were watching it, I kind of feel like sometimes they might have put these back to back somewhere. So you had like Addams Family and then it was the Munsters or whatever the case might be. As a kid, I think I totally would have said Munsters. And if I was going to go back and watch, I would still watch either of the shows. Like that doesn't diminish my love of the Addams Family. But I think as a kid, Herman Munster was goofy and I just kind of loved his character. I thought it was hilarious. I love the idea of the dragon under the stairs and just all that stuff. And yeah, obviously Addams Family has done better than Munsters has. I mean, when they tried to make Munsters movies and they tried to do a remake, no. No, I think I mentioned it earlier. There's a 1995 TV movie called Here Come the Munsters. Avoid it. It's not good. So I loved both. I think the Munsters would just barely edge out Addams Family for me.
Yeah, I have to, to me, they coexist. The Addams Family definitely is, the TV show definitely went for the zany and weird. And I was talking to you a little bit earlier. The Munsters occasionally had like a little bit more thematically going on underneath. There was a little bit more of the message of being accepted and the importance of accepting people being different. Addams Family didn't seem to care that anybody thought that they were weird or different or creepy and kooky, wherever. So if you wanted to go to what was the more wholesome, of them, I would definitely say, and the Munsters probably had better writing. And I don't. If you put them in a cage match, John Astin versus Fred Gwynn, I think you're going to have two steaming corpses at the end because I couldn't decide who to throw a chair in to help out. Fred Gwynn will forever, for me, have that classic performance in My Cousin Vinny as the judge. Just transcends being Herman Munster for just that time. But outside of that, and Judd in Pet Sematary, he's always going to be Herman Munster. John Astin is probably always going to be Gomez Addams, but he's done so much else that, and especially a lot of voice work that he's kind of he's happy being Gomez. So I also have a lot of. I actually had a run-in with at a comic convention in Baltimore years and years ago. The gentleman who played Grandpa Munster, I'm slipping on his name, and I should know it. He was signing autographs, and he wasn't being an absolute jerk to people. So that kind of turned me off, and I was just like, Grandpa Munster's mean. He was saying, no personalizations, no handshakes, no pictures. Keep moving. It was just like, wow. So that kind of turned me off just a little bit. So long story. I gotta go Addams.
Was it Al Lewis? Is that the actor?
Al Lewis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for this one, I'm just going to have to answer yes. I'm hearing what everyone's saying, and I mean, I'll say, you know what, Addams Family. But I don't think I've seen the Munsters in a while. Man, you're right, maybe Munsters. Yeah, but I really like that. Yeah, I'm going back and forth. I'm really, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I always do this. I always answer yes to these questions. I can't do that. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to answer yes. I think both shows, and I want to go back and watch them. We found the channel, the Me TV channel, and I remember we put it on. We're like the kids, oh my gosh, you guys got to check this out. Weirdly enough, like the kids were kind of like okay with the Munsters and the Addams Family, but they both really got into MASH. And my kids are 7 and 11. So my 7-year-old daughter loves MASH. Like she can't, every time a helicopter comes on, she goes, is this MASH? No, this is the A-Team. Oh, okay. And so I don't know. So I gotta try to re-up the Addams Family and the Munsters. But they're both great shows.
That is insane to me because I can't stand MASH.
Really?
I never liked that show. Yeah, I don't know why. I think there was always a show on that I wanted to watch, and then my dad would put on MASH. I was like, Dad, I don't want to watch this. I want to watch something. So I just have this reaction to, when the music comes on, I'm like, no, gotta change the channel. Yeah. One of the only TV shows, there was a project we had to do in high school. If my wife is listening right now, she'll start laughing. We had to do this project in high school where we had to do this, we had to fold paper. We had to do the origami, fold into geometric shapes, and we couldn't use any tape or any glue or anything like that. I am about the least handy, crafty person ever. So my shape was going to require a lot of glue and a lot of tape, and I knew I was not going to do well on this project, and I just kept working at it, kept trying to get it, and it ended up being like 3 o'clock in the morning, and my whole thing was just a massive mess of glue and tape, and it was all scrunched in on one side, and I had the TV on in the basement while I was working, and all of a sudden it ended up being they were starting like a 3-hour early morning marathon of MASH, and that music came on, and I think I just started crying. Like at that point, I'm like, I hate geometry. I hate craft projects. I hate MASH. I just want to go to bed. And I'm not a big fan of MASH, but good for your kids.
Hey, have you watched MASH later or no? I love MASH.
I think I might have watched an episode or two later, and it was fine.
A lot of the wisecracks. That's why I'm kind of surprised you wouldn't. You said dry kind of humor and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised you wouldn't pick up that. And then also had kind of the serious tone of the war stuff. And I thought it was a good blend. We grew up on MASH. I loved it. I think
it's just a mental block from childhood.
Some sort of therapy could.
Yeah.
What I love watching, going back and seeing those old shows, and I'm going to tie it back to what we're talking about here, and you mentioned it, and this is what makes me want to watch the Munsters and the Addams Family. Is Rob? I think you mentioned that you felt like in the Munsters, the writing there was a little bit more. Did you say social commentary or?
Social. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a message.
There's a message, and I don't want to go so far as to say, oh, well, modern shows just don't have a message, but it's amazing because that's, when we started watching MASH, I remember looking at my wife just this like a month ago when we just rediscovered it in Me TV. I'm like, it's really amazing that you can watch these shows and there is, and I mentioned, like, there's a lot going on here and it's all hitting you within a half hour and it's all within the framework of, something that passed the League of Decency and allowed it to be on television. It's not like people had to be taking their clothes off or dropping F-bombs or gratuitous violence, but there's a strong message there. And I think, boy, I'm going to sound like an old and say, oh, the old stuff was better. But I mean, that's just cool to go back and revisit and see these things that are on one level. This is really entertaining. This is funny or creepy or whatever. But then, oh, wow. There's a depth here that I'm not going to go so far to say that modern television lacks, but I think it doesn't quite have that same enduring message that maybe you saw in a lot of those older shows. Like now you get a little bit more of a kind of a ripped from the headline kind of like, this is what's happening in the world. Look at it. We're going to put it in our show. And it's cool. I mean, it's good stuff, great acting. And I think those older shows, it was just different how they were putting a message out there. Maybe I'm full of beans. So, feel free to.
I'm going to go with, I got to split up the two and say movie, obviously, Addams Family. TV show, me and my brothers were definitely more Munsters than Addams Family. We watched it, but like I think Rob had said, it is definitely a little bit more strange and out there. And there wasn't a takeaway message from those all the time, where I would almost liken, when I was thinking about it and just kind of thinking about this whole message part of it, there was almost an element of, this is going to sound weird, but Andy Griffith, in the sense that there was Opie, a lot of them centered around the boy, and then there was that fatherly advice. Like you felt, I mean, I wish, like it was like, man, Mr. Munster, as goofy as he is, man, he would be a cool dad. Like you don't say that about Gomez. I don't sit there and thinking like Gomez, I wish that was my family. But like the Munsters, there was a certain kind of lovingness to the whole family. And like they were the normal people and everyone else was the weirdos. And because they saw people as different, and it used that in a lot about bullying. And there was a lot of those things that he, that I think it's Butch dealt with. Mm-hmm. So, and there was that advice from it was almost literally kind of like a sort of a honeymooner, Sandy Griffith sort of feel of like there was little lessons at the end of it. And the way, Jackie Gleason would always kind of tie it together with some sort of message that he learned from the show, about like his wife, and he appreciated her more. And he would say something about, and there was always that little kind of sit down moment at the end where they kind of learned their lesson from the show. And I think we just gravitated. And I think both have awesome theme songs, but the one that you're going to dance, the one you might sing along more is probably Addams Family. But at the same time, the Munsters, we just got up and it was like, I remember Saturday mornings, and, you'd just be dancing as the theme's coming in. It's like they're all, coming down the stairs. I still see the theme playing in the opening and stuff. I just loved it. Like we were a big Munsters fan. We had the Munsters lunchboxes. At one point. So, and I can't believe it was only on for 2 seasons. I think it had like 70 episodes.
So it was the Addams Family.
Yeah. I can't believe that they were that short, because it felt like there was just more episodes than I think I remember. So looking at that was kind of a shock to me, but yeah, definitely I would go Munsters as a kid. And I was curious, I don't know who has kids, does anybody show them to their kids, or these episodes or anything like that? Pat, you haven't done that yet?
We tried it out, but they were kind of like, it was like, guys, check out this show. So, I mean, I think they were getting inundated with it. Maybe this weekend we should sit down and let's watch an episode. And I
always wonder if it's like, you age out of that again too. And like we saw it when we were younger, so we grew, and I had older brothers and we were all watching it. So it just kind of became that type of thing back then. Where is there a window for where they're going to really take up to the charm of that? Like, I always almost feel like, I don't know, probably about 9 to 12, but I don't know. Kids are different now, because once they see some stuff, they might be like, well, this is just cheesy and stupid. But if that's the first kind of TV shows you're watching, they kind of endear to it a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, both of those shows have 2 things working against them. You have the canned laugh track, and they're black and white.
Yep.
So that's 2 strikes against them.
Before they've seen too many other things that they won't give that a chance. And that was kind of my point. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that, Pat, if you've shown your kids the first few episodes of WandaVision, maybe they'll be okay with the black and white and the laugh track. And
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I looked it up really quickly. I think one of the reasons why, and sometimes I realize this with older TV shows in particular, that I think they just had longer seasons than what we're used to seeing, because both, I looked it up real fast, the Munsters, only 2 seasons, but 70 episodes, and when we're used to seeing, the average, longer running TV show is I'm thinking of like, with something like The Flash that we watch on CW or something like that. That's usually like, 22, 24 episodes. So you're already looking at, if it's 70, you're already looking at that feeling more like, 3 seasons or 4 seasons, depending on what type of show you're used to watching. And same thing with the Addams Family. I think that one is 64 episodes over the course of 2 years. So I think a lot of those older TV shows just had longer seasons than what we tend to have now when you're looking at like 20 episodes in a run of a TV show for a season. But yeah, it does seem like, and it must have, and part of it too must have just been how those were run in reruns, and they were just on all the time. I remember that being on constantly as a kid. All right, question number 3, our final question of the 3 questions. If you could have a house like the Addams, what kind of secret room would you like to have? And my wife's response to this one was she didn't really necessarily care about the secret room, but she wants to have the shelf in a library where you pull the book and it opens up to a secret door. She didn't really care I don't think she cared what room was behind it, but as long as she could have something like that.
Yeah, I think along the same lines. I'd like to have the library where, pull the book down, disappear, nobody finds you.
Yep.
One of those DVDs back there. You pull that and the wall opens up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Blue velvet.
Yeah.
Pat'll never find me.
I don't really know what would be in there. I think just a cool little man cave type of thing. But yeah, having that secret door that you just open up and get away from everything. Yep. Little safe place.
I think I'd have a little mini movie theater.
Yeah, I would say little theater, a little workout equipment in there, a heavy bag, a fridge. Yep.
I'd have an underground racetrack.
I kind of figured you would.
I'd have like a whole complex. You know what I'm saying? Just under, and you could take my bike down there and just go around. I think that'd be fun. With
Madame Tussauds wax figures of Monica Bellucci and Morticia Addams. And
there we go. I mean, I got it all, man. I got the world on a string.
There you go. Pat, I didn't realize you had such a thing for vampires.
I didn't either. It took Dennis to kind of open my eyes to it, and now we're all good.
Okay. All right. Well, I know what to get you for Halloween now, so that's good to know.
Hey, there it is.
All right.
Yeah, the vampire.
One last thing on top. I would be remiss with my wife was, as I was watching this last night, we were talking and she goes, my brother said that you should definitely bring up the pinball game. And I was like, oh yeah, that was great. I used to play it. And I just looking it up before we started talking, it is the highest selling pinball game of all time to this day. Still, it was the Addams Family pinball game. It came out around the time the movie did.
The Addams Family pinball. I remember this.
I played that. There's a Monsters one too.
Yeah.
I played the Munster one too. I forgot where that was at, but it was Haunted Trails, but somewhere they had the Munsters one as well. But yeah, the Addams Family one in that. I didn't know that was the highest.
Wow, that's cool. Do you remember that back in the day when you wanted to play a game, you had to know where to go? Oh, the Quick Trip has this one, but if you want to play this, got to get on your bikes and ride across town because, the hot dog restaurant that has, the Addams Family.
There was a Mr. Submarine, and they had the pinball games there. Me and my brother would go there, order a couple sandwiches, and just sit there and play pinball for like hour, chat with but you'd wait for the ones to come. There'd be 2. It wasn't like there was 20 of them. There'd be 2, and they would cycle through. And sometimes you'd come in and be like, "Oh man, what'd you do with the other one?" We got this one for the. Like, I want the other one back. You just have to find out where it maybe rotated through, and there'd be some other shop maybe in the area.
Yeah.
We had a nickel arcade up here, not too far away from where we live. And back in the day, when it used to be a much bigger space, now it's like half of what it used to be. They used to have a bunch of pinball machines. I'm pretty sure they had the Addams Family, like the original, the 1992 Addams Family pinball machine. I just looked it up. If anybody's interested in purchasing one refurbished, you would be set back about $13,000. Although, I mean, they do have a payment plan. You can go as low as $419.39 a month. So, if you didn't need a car,
That's the original. I know they redid. Didn't they? I'm looking here, and they redid one for the movie. It looks like.
Well, that was this one, I think. This was it was released in 1992.
Yeah, it's the one for the movie. The one for the movie is the highest selling.
That is the high. The one for the movie is the highest.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's got like is it Fester's head right at the bottom? Yeah. Bottom slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I remember I was always, and I like going to my grandparents' house anyway, but I remember my grandparents when they had got a new house down in, they lived down in Texas, and they had bought this new house, and it was a much bigger house. There were only two of them there, but had a bunch of grandkids, so they bought this big house so that all the grandkids could come over pretty much all the time. And my grandpa bought an old Flash Gordon pinball machine, and I loved going over there. And I mean, I like being there anyway, just because it was grandparents' house, but the fact that you could go over and play pinball anytime you wanted, just absolutely loved it.
Okay, yeah, I do remember the Munster one. I remember the big Franken, Herman, the big Herman character that you had to go up through.
Yeah.
And I do remember Fester's head at the bottom of the other one. I remember vaguely remember the Gomez and Morticia.
Yeah.
On the back.
Yeah.
Kind of like poster, whatever you want to call it, for the promotion.
I'm looking at all these pictures and having flashbacks.
So cool.
All right. Well, we're gonna let Pat go have his flashbacks. That's gonna be it for this one for the Addams Family. So thank you everybody for joining us once again for another episode of the 30-something movie podcast. You can find us at 30podcast.com. If you head over to our website, it's got all the different ways that you can find past episodes of the show at 30 podcast. That's where we're at on a lot of the different social media outlets. If you are wanting to leave us a voicemail, you can either do so through the voicemail link on our website, 30podcast.com, or we've still got the old voicemail line is up and running, the love line, as Pat affectionately calls it. It is 872-356-6843. If you want to call that one, that's 872-35-MOVIE. If you want to give that line a call, just kind of, if you want to leave a message about a movie we've got upcoming, or if you want to leave a message about something we've already talked about, go ahead and leave it there and we'll feature it on the show. Next up, we've got for the month of March is our Girl Power Month. So our episodes coming up here in March are Necessary Roughness, My Girl, Thelma and Louise, Fried Green Tomatoes, and Soap Dish. Our March Patreon episode for our Patreon co-executive producers is our favorite songs of 1990 and 1991. Pat, I've already started my chart. I think I'm probably pretty good. It might take me a few more weeks to just narrow it down, but we'll get there. And then April is going to be our California Dreams month. That'll be Doc Hollywood, The Hard Way, LA Story, and Career Opportunities. So that's what we got coming up over the course of the next couple of months or so. Once again, I want to thank you, Rob, for being here with us tonight. It was fun to get to know you a little bit more, have you here on the show. Is there any websites, anything else you want to advertise here at the end, or any messages for everybody before we sign off?
No, it was great to have you guys on here, and I appreciate it. And I hope to talk to you guys sometime soon. Thank you.
Yeah, no, sounds good. And as I actually said earlier, I think our October Patreon episode is going to be Evil Dead. Maybe we can get you back on for that one.
Love to.
Yeah.
Love to.
Yeah. All right. Well, from everybody here at the 30-something movie podcast, Pat, Dennis.
Yep.
Have a good night, guys.
You
rang. Or is it made from real Girl Scouts?
That's okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Remember, go watch some good movies. Be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we will see you back here next time.
They're creepy and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together ooky, the Addams Family. The house is a museum. When people come to see them, they really are a scream. The Addams Family.